Hello, everyone. Welcome back to ModGolf Live. Gosh, hard to believe we've been doing this for over a month now, and this is our fifth show. We're just keep on chugging away here. One thing I've learned in entrepreneurship is consistency, and just keep moving forward. And I've already found the traction we've got, the audience that we've attracted here just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And not only during the live show today, but also afterwards when we repost this. And we've got, gosh, one of the shows almost 10,000 views and really a great level of engagement. So thank you, everyone, for that. So my name is Colin Weston. I am the host of the ModGolf podcast. We've been doing the podcast for over 7 years, the YouTube channel for about 3 or 4 years now. And yeah, decided to build this Patreon community, which some of you may say, what is this Patreon thing you're talking about, Colin? So yeah, it's where we actually create exclusive content, real engagement with our ModGolf community. Hey, if you love golf as much as I do, want to celebrate and showcase entrepreneurship, innovation, the growth of the game, making it more welcoming and inviting and just plain fun. And that's a nice segue to the guest that we have today. Here's someone that's definitely making it more fun, and that is Keith Stewart and all the good things that he's doing with Read the Line. I got to bring Keith on in a minute, but I'm going to start with I'm going to call them, I know it's still the morning here. I'm on the West Coast in Vancouver. Back east, it's just past noon, so you're already early afternoon, but I got to start calling it Monday morning musings. There we go. Just came up with that one. We'll see if that one sticks here. And what's gone on in the world of golf and maybe even the world of life the last little while over the last couple of days. Well, on the weekend, you may have seen with the Travelers and with Scotty Scheffler ended up winning the Travelers, but it was a little bit of confusion at the end. If any of you were watching what was going on there, you may have seen this on the 18th green here. That yes, a bit of mayhem was going on. So yes, there was some climate activists that decided to disrupt the party. I found this interesting because there were some that obviously haven't done this before. Because one guy was just kind of casually walking across the green here, and then got taken down pretty hard, but not as hard as a year ago with Adam Hadwin back in Toronto at the RBC Canadian Open. So I don't know if you remember that, but he wanted to celebrate after the big win and with a bottle of champagne. He got taken down hard. I think Adam got taken down harder than any of those climate activists there. So I don't think Adam was there yesterday at the Travelers. Well, maybe he could have given them a couple of tips there about how to avoid getting taken down because some of those guys got taken down pretty hard. But you know what? Free speech. I'm not going to get political about this. Did disrupt things, but you know what? Ultimately, they changed the position of the hole for the playoff, and off they went. And Scotty won, and won the 6th tournament this year. I think the first player to actually do that before July 1st to win 6. Since I think Arnold Palmer did it. I'm sure Keith knows all the stats, and he's going to come on here and tell us all about that, which is a great segue to bring Keith on. And here he is. There's the man himself. So Keith Stewart, the founder of Read the Line. Keith, my friend, how are you today?
Colin, I'm well, and I enjoyed your Monday musings. But just remember, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You know, some of us weren't very excited that they had to move the hole and all those things had to take place. You know?
No, well, I guess for maybe for some certain betting lines that wouldn't work out too well. So hey, let's get right into it here, Keith. It's like when I had you on the podcast, and we had just looked pre-show that it was June of 2021 that we had you on the show, and you yourself having your show there back home that you have, and you'll talk a little bit about that. So at the time, you were really doing the media thing, and also as a PGA Class A professional, and your background in golf, that's what we're really talking about. And you were just starting to formulate, I believe you're kind of working in the background for Read the Line that you launched about 4 or 5 months later after I had you on the podcast. So anybody that's listened to that episode doesn't know the new things that you've done. So hey, why don't we start? Like let's get right into it here. Why don't you let everybody know what Read the Line is and what you're doing and what that motivation is, where you saw that opportunity and that excitement to go for it, for that entrepreneurial venture that you're on this journey on now.
Well, Colin, a lot of it comes down to inspiration that I've gained through people like you that I interviewed when I had that radio show so many years ago. That I hosted for 5 years. I met so many wonderful people that were doing some cool things in golf, and it kind of opened my mind that after being a club professional for 20 plus years, that maybe there's some different ways to grow the game. And Top Golf would be one of those, like, kind of the biggest things that kind of opened my eyes to, like the first time I went to a Top Golf, I was like, they're not open in the morning, which is every golfer I've ever, like, they're knocking down the door at 5 a.m. They don't really promote practicing, and everybody loves to be range rats. And then, like the rules of golf and everything, and there's music on, and all these things were like so different. And it started to really cause me to think of things and see things in a different way. So I left being a golf professional at a club, that stereotypical role, at the end of 2020. In 2021, I started building a business called Read the Line, and we are a media company. And week to week, we cover all the betting analysis for the PGA Tour and the women of the LPGA Tour. And what's kind of unique about that is that I'm a PGA expert, and I travel to the facility. So I was in Connecticut yesterday. They're covering, this eighth signature event of the PGA Tour season, from a betting perspective, for the people that subscribe to Read the Line, and then the other partners that I work with, like Golf Digest or Sports Grid or the Sporting News, and so on and so forth. So basically, what I did was I created something that in my mind felt would really create an emotional connection between fans that maybe haven't picked up the game but do bet on it, or other people that do play the game but don't bet on it, and just kind of, make the earth is round sort of situation come true.
Right, right. So I'm curious, when you started to map out what you wanted Read the Line to be, and perhaps also what you didn't want it to be, with competition, like all the big boys, like the DraftKings of the world, and like they bet on absolutely everything, but they got some golf bets on there. How do you differentiate? So tell us that. What is your kind of your secret sauce and your differentiator as compared to these larger betting platforms that offer everything and maybe more generic? How do you really connect with golfers and add more value for your community?
Oh, that's such a great question, because right there in the beginning, it was like, I was working with my business partner, and he and I were like, all right, let's write down our uniques. What are your uniques,
Mm,
right? In building this company. And just to be clear, I am a filter, right? So I am someone that people would come to, or they would subscribe to, that would give, rather than they would do their own 6, 8, 10 hours of research a week on the different golf events, they could come and read our newsletter or follow us on social media, and then they could get the information that they wanted in 5 minutes. And that's really what it comes down to in a modern world, is that I create winning information, and then I pass it along to my subscribers or to my own little betting community. And then those folks, then they take that information, and then they use whatever website it is that they use, whether it be DraftKings or FanDuel or Bet365. Up in Canada, you've got, there's Betfair, and there's a number of other different ones. So, I give people the opportunity, I give them information, and try to empower them to make their own decisions. And then they go and have fun, and then they bet on someone, and then they come down to, the weekend, and it's like, oh geez, like, is this person in the running? And, like, so yesterday we had Tom Kim, and Tom Kim was a very, very active outright bet that we had done earlier in the week, and he was 50 to 1. So
yeah.
you put $10 down, you were going to get 500, had things worked out yesterday. So that's why I kind of joked about the whole protester thing, was that having Tom Kim, he had just birdied the 18th hole with one hole location, and then they moved it on him. And I was thinking to myself, man, that's not what we need, because we're going against the number one player in the world. And like, moving the hole around only benefits the better player, right? Like, the guy that can adjust the best is the guy that's obviously the number one in the world. So you have all these kind of crazy things that happen. But my point is that anyone that had Tom Kim with me, coming up like the last 4 or 5 holes, I mean, like, we were on the edge of our seat, just like, can Tom pull this off against, this titan that is Scotty Scheffler these days, and is Scotty getting it win number 6? And then how do we hedge or do we not hedge on those bets and everything? So really what comes down to is that, to get back to your question about being unique, is that if you go out in the golf betting space, and this is why I built the company. Well, one of the reasons why is that I'm from New Jersey, and I kind of grew up in a betting sort of culture. So it's something that it always was interesting to me. And then I found myself as a professional in golf for a very long time, and pretty much everyone that plays golf bets. It's kind of like the fabric of the game. whether it's your mom, your dad, or anyone else like that. So it's friends, family, whatever. We go and you and I tee it up on the first hole. We're like, hey, what are we playing for today? And I mean, it could be something as easy as lunch, or it could be $5, or it could be 10 cents. It doesn't really matter, but it's just something that golfers easily acclimate to. And as I started to build the company, I was like, okay, like anyone could just go online. And I saw this, like, the opportunity in my mind was that on one end, I had a bunch of like golf media folks that were established that didn't really know how to take betting information and then contextualize it in real time along with the stories that they're telling. So there's wonderful storytellers at a place like Golf Channel or Golf Digest or something like that, but they couldn't flip it in real time into a real betting conversation. And then conversely, you've got a bunch of guys in their mom's basement on Excel spreadsheets yelling at each other on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, in the middle, there'd be like a really good opportunity here for like somebody that's an authentic golf expert and somebody that, geez, like I thought to myself, I would have a huge advantage if I went to the site and I could see the course conditions and I could see who was playing well on the range and do all of those things. And as it turns out, those have become my true uniques. So I am the only person that travels on site who is a PGA professional that handicaps golf for the men and the women. And as such, I've picked 30 winners in the last 30 months pre-tournament, combined both men and women, which is
Wow.
just an astronomical number, right? Like people have a tough time wrapping their head around it. But the fact is that I use those uniques to my advantage. When you think about it, whether it's the Stanley Cup Game 7, there won't be any handicappers down there in Florida at the arena.
Right.
Right. They won't be having those types of conversations. When I'm on property and I'm creating content for my betting community, it's like second to none because I'm sitting there looking with an educate. I mean, I taught the game for 12,000 hours plus. And, so I've got my Gladwell, content quota. And
Yeah.
then I've also played the game professionally. So I kind of know what's going through their mind. So like you add all of that up along with, a pretty creative mind. And the next thing you know, read the line 3 years later it just grows infinitely every day.
It grows and grows. So let's talk about partnerships because I believe. Well, why don't you tell me, because we've talked about this, you and I, before, about entrepreneurship. You cannot go it alone, and you've got as a founder, you've got a co-founder, you've got a partner there that's kind of helping you kind of fill in some of the gaps and move the business forward. But also the other partnerships, other organizations. Tell me about your relationship with the PGA Tour and some others. Like, how are you able to then accelerate your growth through partnerships and alliances that also give you a competitive advantage too?
So the first year in, which would have been 2022, it was like, okay, you have to be consistent. You have to put out something every single week. You have to build this. You have to, because it was like at first you're like, you're trying to sell a pen and you have no pen in the room. I mean, you know what I'm saying, like this,
Yeah.
This was a new idea and it's still very much in its infancy, golf betting it as it is. And it's scary to think that last year, it was a $10.1 billion industry with a B, but it's still really in its infancy. And that's how much down here in America, people are betting on sports. I mean, I think last year was $119 billion that were bet on total in sports. So, it's one of those things where I knew that after year one, and I had, okay, here is this like resume of stuff that I've done. Here's my CV of content, right? And this is what I can do. I could do it. I could do it audio. I could do it with visual. I could do it also with editorial. So I took those three things and I started to present it at the end of the year to different institutional media outlets in golf. And I built a relationship with Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News and the PGA Tour and the LPGA. And then they had me start creating content for them for all of 2023 now. So that went on for a year. And by the end of that year, next thing you know, that started to climb even more. And then my new partners now for this year are Golf Digest. So I'm the betting lead content developer and writer and person for Golf Digest, which is golf's #1 digital platform. They wanted to lean into golf betting and they thought I'd be the best person to do it because of those uniques. And then I also work for a company called Sports Grid. I still work for the Sporting News. I still work for the PGA Tour and the LPGA. And I create content all the time. And then, and this sounds complicated, but the easiest way for me to explain is that if you go to readtheline.com right now and you look all of the content that I create is housed right there. It's like a hub of activity. And
Right.
then you can just keep going there all week. And then you just click on something and it'll pull you out to an article, or it might pull you to a podcast or whatever it may be. But you're going to get to hear and see and feel what it is that I'm handicapping for the week when it comes to golf.
Nice. Nice. So I wanted to ask you, like, a couple questions I wanted to ask you here, but this one, what do you say to people that look at how sport betting has expanded as a negative thing, how it's, let's say, preying upon some of the weaker people as a vice? So what do you say as a response to that, as far as healthy gambling, as far as safeguards you put in place? And I know we've had this, I know the answer already, the fact that you do this from a good place, but what's your response to that? That people that worry that and see that some people on the outside, like with anything, with any vice, that there's a potential addiction, that to kind of keep it kind of safe and fun.
I mean, I think there's a couple things that I do that hopefully stresses my concern for all of that. I mean, obviously, I know what I'm doing, and since May of 2018 down here in the States, when our federal government gave the states the right to make a decision whether or not they wanted to allow mobile sports betting or sports betting in general, right? And now 24 states, we're working on 25, 26, but 24 states have made it legal. And in those states, you can use a FanDuel or a DraftKings or any one of those sites. And basically what it comes down to is you can only bet the money that you are able to put in.
Right.
And, so that's different than what it was before, where you might be able to, first of all, it was illegal, so you shouldn't have been doing it. But second of all, is that you could run maybe a tab and then you could overextend yourself. Now, that's not to say that people are taking money that they shouldn't be having, or that they should be using to spend on other things, like maybe their rent or whatever, or, Christmas presents. I don't know, the stories, they run the full spectrum. But the idea is that like you have to be able to put the money in order to use it. And quite honestly, most people do this as entertainment. And I portray it as entertainment. I don't say like, hey, you need to bet $100 on it. People can bet whatever they want. They can bet $1, they can bet $5. The average bet on something like a DraftKings is like $10 to $15. It is minimal. It's not what you think, that it's like, oh, I'm betting $5,000 on, Scotty Scheffler to win this week. And I'm sure that people do that. But what most people don't know about a lot of those sites is that they don't take those types of high-end bets. And they certainly don't take them from people over and over again. If they monitor how much you're betting, and they will actually throw up, reminders and everything, like, this is your X number bet of the week. I mean, so there's all sorts of like responsibility practices in place. Now, that's not to say that you can't figure out workarounds, but at least we're all trying to be, thoughtful leaders in the space, and not sitting there and trying to create degenerate gamblers week in and week out. If you follow any of my content, and me personally, Colin, like, I am the director of fun. So I'm constantly pushing the fun side of all of this and making sure that people look at it as entertainment and not, some sort of career revenue stream.
Absolutely. No, I have seen you in action, and I love the fact that you still have that title of director of fun. I think you're I think it's global. I think you've earned that moniker and that
Back
title
there somewhere. It's up there. Yeah, still on the wall.
There we go.
Still on the wall.
There we go.
There.
Remember seeing, it doesn't seem to happen now. Maybe they put safeguards in place at tournaments. I don't know what they've actually managed to do, but I saw about a year ago, maybe it was like a year and a half ago, at some tournaments where it turned out that because someone was betting, whether it was like a real-time prop bet on a drive or whatever, and they screamed during someone's backswing, right? Purposely to influence the outcome of, obviously, that shot, that hole, that round, that bet. So that doesn't seem to be happening anymore. So what's going on there that those type of nefarious type of people are not doing that type of thing anymore? What's new? What's going on there?
I mean, well, there's a lot of ways we could pick on the PGA Tour or the LPGA for the decisions they've made when it covers professional golf over the last 2+ years, but we're not going to go down that road because it's endless. But I will say this much: being a credentialed member of the media, with Inside the Ropes access out there on tour, I don't think people give them enough credit for the safeguards that they're going through. I mean, you just look at what you mentioned to open the show in your musings, right? Those folks running out, those protesters, how quickly the police grabbed them, right? And, granted, it's actually somewhat difficult to get into a tour event and, you know, bring something like that stuff in and be some sort of person that is going to be that level of a disruptor. And,
Right.
yes, for specific to what you're asking, someone could yell at any time. Someone could be a distraction at any time. It could happen at tennis, it could happen at collegiate sports, it could happen at all these different things. But we just find that in general, if the association that's running the event is paying attention, that we're able to kind of limit that level of, I guess, fan interaction. There's always a couple of jerks in the crowd. That's what happens when you get that many people together. But I'll be honest with you. I mean, I went to 22 tour events last year, combined between the men and the women. I'm on pace to do just as many this year. And that happens for like maybe once or twice a season, when there's 40 plus events and that we hear about it. I mean, let's be honest. What's more disruptive? I mean, what do we see more videos of? It's like, the rock music and the drones or whatever. I mean, John Rahm was freaking out over drones this weekend at Live, right? And the
Yeah.
rock music and everything that's going on there. I mean, if we're not worried about that, I mean, I don't think we should be overly worried about people screaming at, Tom Kim, miss it or something like that on the
Right.
last putt. On the last putt. I mean, like, there's so many things going on. Hopefully, this is not that much of a concern.
I hope not either. I hope not either. So why don't you walk through for our viewers here with read the line? What here? I'll even show this. So there we go. I've got a screenshot of your website up there. So why don't you
Okay.
walk us through what the experience is to onboard for the first time? Someone that's just wants to bet on golf for the first time. They find this interesting, but they're still not quite sure. Like, yeah, just walk us through that journey of onboarding someone that they can be a new member of your community.
All right, this is a great question. And so much of, my background as a golf professional is helpful here because it's very similar to someone going to the first tee for the first time. It's like you got to start at the parking lot. It's like, where would you park? Where would you change your shoes? How do you get to the range? How do you get range balls? Like, how do you check into the shop? How do you, figure out where your tee time is? Where is the first tee? Like, all of those details that I've taken care of is, as a member of the service industry in golf, as a green grass operator all my life, I've tried to put into, helping people learn, how to become a better. And I say that phrase all the time as like a catchphrase. I'm like, you want to be a better, but there's so much education of what we're trying to do in the content that I'm creating. So if you go to the website, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a place where you can subscribe, and you can do it for free. You don't have to pay for anything. And you'll get a weekly newsletter that covers the men and the women of professional golf. So the LPGA and the PGA Tour, but some weeks it might be the US Open. So that's not necessarily the PGA Tour, but you get the point. So those two different tours are covered week in and week out. And I send out a newsletter that's free, and you can look at that. Now, there's a limited number of picks there, but basically my narrative for the week about how I'm breaking down the golf course. And this is truly what makes it very, very cool, Colin, is that I'm creating what I like to think of as proactive media, right? So
Right.
when I go to the media center and we're at the US Open, and then somebody comes in and it's the first round, and Ludwig Aubert is like playing really, really, or after two rounds, he's the leader and he comes in the media center. Everybody goes in there from Golf Digest and Golf and AP and everyone else. And they ask him a bunch of questions, and then they come out, and in a sea of similarity, they react to what he has done that day. Well, I really don't care what he did that day. I need to know what he's going to do tomorrow. So that's the level of proactive media that I'm creating, which is kind of a huge paradigm shift in the way that people are consuming things nowadays. Like, they want to know, Keith, what's going to happen tomorrow? I just watched what happened today. I streamed it on my phone. Doesn't matter. I wasn't at home. I know exactly what happened, or I saw the highlights on social media. So they want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. And this is why this is really taken off. So when you come to the website, you then are going to have this opportunity on Wednesday to get an idea of what I think is going to happen for the next 4 days. And as I take you through that journey, then as we go each day, you follow me on social media, there'll be updates as to what I think is going to continue to happen the next day and the next day and the next day. And then really it just becomes more of like, just this really kind of fun journey or experience where you get to explore yourself and experiment with the different types of content that I create. I mean, maybe you're a very audiovisual type person, right? So you love the podcasts that I'm doing, or maybe you love to read, which a lot of people still very much like to do. So you want to go to all the digital editorial that's available. So on any given week, there's over an hour worth of TV and podcasting, and probably almost 2 hours worth. And there's any given week, there's 10,000 words of editorial there too, is with which to consume. So what happens is that in the newsletter, in the paid version, I break down what all the different bets are that I would do personally for the week. And it gives the person the choice to say, hey, like, how would I do all of this? And then, there's always opportunities where people DM me or they reach out to me or they email me and they say, hey, Keith, like I didn't understand this or whatever. And then, I'm the one behind the curtain answering all those types of questions from the perspective of a very thoughtful person who grew the game of golf, with all due respect to Greg Norman and Liv and everybody else that thinks that they're growing the game, right? Like, I grew the game like the other 28,000 men and women of the PGA of America that are at the sites. So I think about it that way. And I'm always very, very conscious of, like, when I put content out, not to just like throw things against the wall just because I understand what they are doesn't mean that my entire audience understands what they are. And I get reminded sometimes, maybe I do throw a couple things out there and then I go back and I try to explain them. But, I try to make it as easy to understand, as less complicated as it can be, because if you just go straight to one of those apps, it can be a little bit overwhelming. And we try to walk people through all of that.
Nice. So coming up here, I guess a couple weeks time here, we've got the Open Championship. So
Sure.
Tell us, it's last major of the year. So how are you ramping up for that, and maybe even the Scottish Open before that? So tell me what's going on the rest of the year for what you're doing with Read the Line, and I got another question too about the future, but let's start with that, with what's going on for the rest of the season here, and the FedEx Cup too.
Yeah, we don't just live for the majors. I mean, we've got Rocket Mortgage this week. So, we've got another handicap or another tournament to handicap, which is unique at Detroit Golf Club, Donald Ross design, which is really cool. And there aren't a lot of big names in the field, but this is how people really get connected to the game of golf. In one of these, we'll say, non-signature events, if we pick the winner, you'll remember that forever, that you had some guy at 40-1, and maybe his name was I don't know, Dylan Wu, or it's SH Kim, or it's Taylor Pendrith, or whoever it might be. Like, these guys are great golfers, and we create this like eternal connection to these guys when you have you put a little bet out there, and you try to figure out whether or not they can win or they can't win. I mean, you don't even have to bet. If you just wrote down 5 names at the beginning of the week that you thought might win, and then you get there on Sunday and one of your players is on that list, then you will feel just the most incredible connection to the game that you always feel when you go out and play yourself, or when you compete with your friends and you just want to play better, right? So if your picks didn't work that week, then the next week you want to make sure that they pick again. So, but to get back to what you were saying about the majors, is that what's made them so interesting in the last 2 years is that that's the only time we see Bryson and Brooks and John Rahm, and we don't really know how they're performing on the other tour, because that level of golf doesn't really require that they put the time and effort and try in, so there's like that really kind of interesting question all the time. It's like, how hard is Cam Smith working on the Live Tour? Versus when he shows up and this is like a really good golf course for him at Pinehurst, like, is he ready to go? Or, Brooks was notorious, even when he was on the PGA Tour, to only get geared up for majors. I mean, the fact the guy has 5 majors and 13 wins is like one of the most unbelievable like things. That's, like, everybody else that has that many majors, has like 30 plus wins, 20 plus wins. It's crazy, right? And the guy's got 13, and he like literally only cares when he cares. So going into the majors, it just becomes such an interesting and compelling conversation, like nonstop, about like, who do we think will do well? Or I'm in a one and done contest, which is one of those contests where you pick one golfer every week to see how good they can do with your friends. But like, once you pick them once in the season, then you're done with that person. And then the next week you have to find another person. So we're deep in the season now. So like, who do I have left for the Open Championship? Is it going to be another story like Brian Harmon, or is it going to be Scotty Scheffler getting win number 7? Because we won't see him for 3 weeks until he shows up there at Royal Troon. I mean, there's just so many cool things that we could talk about. And at this point, we don't even know what the weather's going to be, who's going to get to play with whom. I mean, there's just an endless number of conversations that are in the predictive nature that we're going to have about that tournament that aren't just going to be the same old, which is like, hey, oh, look who's in the newsroom. And then they're saying like, well, if I play good, it's like typical Tiger, like, course looks good, greens are rolling nice, like, we're just so far past all of that. And I get excited about that.
Nice, nice. So, hey, to finish up, I want to talk about the future of Read the Line and the work that you're doing here. So, you're really into year three, season three. So,
Yep.
you're always about progression and evolution. And I know you're like me. You experiment with things, and if you try a little bit of this, and if that's not
Yep.
working, a little less of that, a little more of this. Try something new. I thought this was going to connect. It didn't. I'm not going to get my ego out of the way, and I won't do that anymore. So, where do you see, what can you reveal right now, even for the 2025 season? Are you already thinking about maybe that next building block of what you're going to do to expand, or are you just going to keep doing more of all the good things you're doing? What's going on?
No, certainly our plan is to expand. Right now investors are bringing money into the company, and that is going to allow us and me to create, a larger platform, a larger media platform to be able to cover as much as what we're doing and more, to more depth. Because right now, it's basically myself and then someone that helps me run the business. So what I would like to have is more content creators. So I'm going to bring more of those people on. So therefore, I can do more of the high level, not only just business development things, but when I am out forward facing, I don't have to spend as much time running back to, let's say, my hotel room when I was at Travelers last week in order to crank out like another 2,000 words of editorial, right? So
Right.
like the idea of the platform is to create as much conversation around wagering on golf in a positive light. But there's just a ton of people that are out there that are really, really gifted in what they do, but they're just independents. And there's all these independents everywhere. And what I want to try to do is bring them together like a community, like you do so very, very well, and then allow people to have maybe one or two or five resources, because there's other people that do a very good job in covering golf betting. But, you know, just continue to grow this thing to the point where more and more of institutional golf is paying attention to what we're doing. It's a very logical progression from my mind. The first season was like put together like a portfolio of stuff. And you said it so eloquently earlier, which was like, you just have to be consistent in what you're doing, whether one person is reading it or thousands of people are reading it. Like we're always projecting like ahead. And it's like, well, look what they're doing or whatever. Yeah, but they were there for 7 years, right?
Right.
Like you've been there for 7 weeks. Like, how could you ever expect to have that level of audience, right? And it does grow like a hockey stick. It grows exponentially. So, you ride that kind of plateau for a while. The next thing you know, it takes off. And when it does, are you prepared for that? And if you get ahead of your skis, then you're not. So like year one, what could I actually physically handle in a week? And then project that over 40 something weeks. And then the second year was like, okay, could we add partners that would help grow our audience in a very thoughtful manner? We did that. Now, year three, we've added much bigger partners and we're growing our audience, like at the bottom of that hockey stick turn. And then from there, in order to create more partner relationships, we need more content. So it makes sense that we need to hire people in order to do that next. And that's where we're going.
Nice, nice. Well, my background formally, I think, as you may know, is in architecture. So I always like to
Yep.
use the building analogy. And before you build a high rise, you've got to build the foundation first. Otherwise, if you don't build something solid to build it on, just like with a tree, you need that root system. It will topple over. So if you try to grow it too fast with those other pieces, so you built that foundation even before you launched. When we first spoke back in 2021 in June there. On the ModGolf podcast. I will include the link to that conversation because different than this one here. It's always nice to see the progression. And yeah, we had a great time with the director of fun during that one. So hey, to finish up here, Keith, I know I've got the URL, the link to your website there. Hey, to welcome our viewers here to dip their toe in all the good things you're doing. What can you recommend that they do to connect besides what they see right in front of them there underneath you there with the link to the website?
I'll go back to the story I mentioned earlier, right? Um, Betting is the fabric of the game, right? Everyone gets involved in it in some way, even if it's just like you and I are on the side of the green. And it's like, all right, a drink out, a soda afterwards,
Right.
Colin, for closest to the pin for this chip. We're on the ninth hole. We were just playing a quick nine, right? Like any aspect of this just increases your connection to the greatest game in the world, right? So write some names down who you think might win. Just see what happens. You don't have to bet on them. You don't have to do anything. But I guarantee you that you will suddenly feel an internal and an emotional connection to the game that you only feel when you're out on the golf course, and then you're similarly wagering on your own performance, right? So it's just it heightens your connection, and it just makes it so much more fun. And I'm all about people having more fun when it comes to the game, because that's the way we're going to grow it.
I love it. I love it. And I can truly attest to what you just said there. Every Wednesday morning, I just live super close to a pitch and putt course here in Vancouver, and a buddy of mine who is I think his handicap, he's at least 8 or 9 strokes better than me. I could never beat him head to head if we play on a full course, but I've beat him, I think, the last 7 times in a row at pitch and putt. And we always play for a coffee, so we call it the coffee cup. And I'm just grinding him, sending him coffee cup emojis and trophies afterwards that he has to buy me a coffee. And it's a coffee, right? It's a but it's a dopamine drip. You win, and it feels great. And it also brings people together, and you can chirp at your friends or get chirped at, and all those things. It's fun.
It's the best, and I hope everybody gives it a try.
100%. Well, hey, great conversation, Keith. Thanks for joining me today. Love the work that you're doing. With Read the Line, and for golf in general as the director of fun, as you mentioned. So, hey, we did run into each other at the PGA show briefly, but you were running to a meeting, so we only had a chance to slap each other on the back and say hi. But we've got to get together sometime. We've got to make that happen. It hasn't happened yet, but let's make sure that whether we play a round of golf, maybe we'll play for a cup of coffee or a beer or a soda, who knows? But or at a PGA event. I don't know if you ever come up for the RBC Canadian Open. Did you come up this year for that or not?
I did not. I traveled 5 of the last 7 weeks. So that was one of
Right.
the weeks that I just had to take. I mean, there were so many signature and majors lined up there. It's just a tough spot in the schedule. But I'll tell you this much. That is an impressive event. Those people, they come out for that. And I got to give Canada all the credit in the world. That was an extremely fun golf course, Hamilton Golf and Country Club to handicap that week. Great field. And man, the fans were great there, which when you're working there, makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, they do a great job with Golf Canada. I've got a great relationship with them and the team they put in place. Yeah, they really knock that out of the park every single year. It's and it only keeps getting better. But who knows, if you're able to make it next year, maybe we can meet there or at the PGA show in January of 2025. Let's make a point to have that soda or a beer or a cup of coffee there. We can sit down and have a chat. That would be great. So, hey, Keith, again, thanks so much for joining me today on ModGolf Live. Everybody that's watching here, to support us both on the Patreon page that we have here. I had the banner running below here a little while ago here. Just it helps us grow, do all the great things that we're doing, once again, to connect all of us here, create this community around celebrating and supporting entrepreneurship in golf, growing the game in an authentic way in the ways that Keith does and everybody else. And in real time, you can just connect with awesome human beings like Keith, and that's what we do and why we do it. So we're going to keep on going for that. So, hey, going to let you go because I know you got to get back and get those betting lines going for this week's event coming up in Detroit. So at the Rocket Mortgage. So, hey, Keith Stewart, my friend, thanks for joining me today on ModGolf Live. Good to see you.
Colin, it was great to be with you, and really enjoyed the conversation, as always.
All right. Good stuff, my friend. You take care. Have a great week. Bye for now. Go. And the stream. There we go.